What's up, average viewers? Today we are going to put two very similar movies head to head. They're both about billionaires who devote their fortune to cosplay and beating up the mentally ill. One of these movies has been deemed one of the greatest movies of all time. It gets defended and praised constantly, but is it really that untouchable? Most people point to Heath Ledger's performance as the reason for this movie's greatness, but today's scoring only includes performance as one of the categories. So, how does the rest of the movie hold up? And will it be dethroned? Find out in this edition of
Silver Screen Skirmish. Round 1. Story.
The Dark Knight starts off strong with a 9 on story. This is not your average comic book movie with a campy villain and a kooky plot. This is a really grounded and realistic take on a character that you can really tell Christopher Nolan wanted to explore as if it could exist in the real world. As such, we have a really incredible story about two opposing forces who fight each other not only physically but with their ideologies. The Joker believes that the world is chaos and everyone is just one push away from being as sick as him, and the Batman believes that everyone deserves a hero and that good will always conquer. Throughout this story, we have one of the best love triangles that has ever been put to screen and one of the most heart-wrenching mid-story twists ever with Rachel's death. We also deal with a lot of ethical questions like the final boat scene. Are those criminals more deserving of death? What does it take to pull the trigger? Fairness, chance, martyrs, and heroism. It can be easy to say, oh, The Dark Knight is overrated, but honestly, if you look at the complexities of the story, you have to admit that it might just be so acclaimed for a reason. The Batman receives an 8.5 on story. The Batman should be commended for how well it dealt with the challenges it had to overcome. Firstly, it overcame countless reboots and fan bias and expectation. It had to overcome a dying cinematic universe and find originality in a character with so many iterations. It had to take a campy character and make him grounded and terrifying, but also believable and insane. While the Batman had a great example to draw from in The Dark Knight, I was honestly blown away with the choices that this movie made in regards to the character. We got a really tortured Bruce, a Bruce who is so obsessed with his work as the Batman that he sees himself as the Batman, and Bruce is a costume he has to put on from time to time. The Riddler has a very close to home origin and ties with the Wayne family, and I thought that portraying the Waynes in a conflicting light was a refreshing take on the story. The mystery that is built by the Riddler, the way the story unfolds, Batman's relationship with the Commissioner and the police, his detective work, the story's biblical themes with the flood and the rebirth, it's all executed amazingly. The reason it doesn't score as high is for a few reasons. Mainly, this movie is not near as quotable as The Dark Knight, so while the story is good, the dialogue is not as impactful or iconic. I could probably quote you 10 lines from The Dark Knight right now, and maybe like one from the Batman. Also, the third act is a little messy compared to the rest of the movie.
Round 2. Tone.
This is the feel of the movie, and The Dark Knight receives an 8.5. The Dark Knight has an amazing tone because it's able to handle all these dark themes without itself having to be so physically dark and slow and brooding all the time. The Batman takes place the majority of the time at night, and it's very darkly lit, and that helps keep a consistent feel throughout the movie. But The Dark Knight accomplishes this while filming in a lot of different scenarios: bank heists in daylight, dinner parties, campaigns, funeral parades, and police stations. No matter what happens in this movie, there is a dark, heavy feeling undercut by a certain joy and excitement and weird fascination with the Joker. The ending is amazing. Hans Zimmer's score is perfect for this movie. Moving on to the Batman, which receives a 9 for tone. If you thought The Dark Knight was dark and disturbing when it came out, then get ready for the Batman because it takes it to a whole new level for PG-13. This movie has often been compared to Seven, and I think that's a really fair comparison. It's a slower movie, darker in color grade and feel, that deals with a serial killer who has extreme ideologies and little morality when it comes to human life and mutilation. While I love The Dark Knight, this movie has a much more consistent and cohesive tone. I mean, can you remember what it was like watching the intro for the first time when they were building up Batman as this horrifying man in the shadows, a symbol of fear that you don't want to cross? It was amazing. While other Batman movies talked about fear and Batman being meant to scare the criminals, I was never actually felt scared. But the tone of this movie had me believing that people fear him in the first 5 minutes. This movie is really artfully done. There's amazing consistency in color choice and set design. I love the camera work. I love the soundtrack. Yes, it's more redundant than The Dark Knight, but it complements the movie amazingly. While these two movies approach tone very differently, I think that credit should be given where credit is due for the Batman.
Round 3. Entertainment.
This is about how rewatchable a movie is, how well does it hold your attention and excite, and The Dark Knight comes in with an unbelievable perfect score of 10. The Dark Knight is one of the most rewatchable movies ever. Despite knowing the plot, it's just delightful to watch the Joker on screen. The truck flip scene, the parachute scene, the pencil scene, the why so serious, the interrogation scene. I wouldn't even have to put up clips for you to know what I'm talking about. The images are just burned into your brain. Despite being a grounded take on Batman, The Dark Knight still understands the assignment as a comic book movie, giving us thrilling action sequences and some levity to keep this movie entertaining without ever having to check your watch. I could go on and on, but I think you all understand how impressive it is to be this entertaining while also being deep, complex, and serious. The Batman falls just below The Dark Knight, receiving a 9 for entertainment. Now, the first reason it scores lower is audience appeal. While The Dark Knight appeals amazingly to an incredibly wide audience, the Batman, I believe, appeals to less people just because of how dark it is and how slow it is. The other reason is that it is definitely less fun than The Dark Knight. It's a heavy movie. It takes a lot out of you to watch. It has its fair share of jaw-dropping action sequences, the Batmobile chase, the hallway gunshot scene, the brutal beating, the adrenaline shot. These scenes are amazing, but they're also kind of brief. It's not as much of a party movie. You would have to convince everyone to be down for a slower moving movie and not talk during it. Even if you like the Batman more than The Dark Knight, you can probably see how by the end of your life, you'll probably have seen The Dark Knight more times than the Batman. And that's why it scores lower in this category.
Round 4. Cinematicness?
I know that's not a word, but this category is about the film elements and production quality like editing, cinematography, set design, locations, music, just generally how good is the movie from a technical standpoint, and The Dark Knight gets an 8. Now hold on, let me justify that score. Nolan is an absolute master at spectacle, but sometimes his fascination with spectacle comes at the sacrifice of good character arcs and tight logic. He's able to disguise this really well, but the problem is obvious in The Dark Knight Rises and Tenet. If you pull off your biased lenses for this movie, you will see some of the same issues. This chase scene under the bridge is an absolute editing disaster. Cars disappear, direction of movement changes, but I have to admit they do a good job at disguising it. However, Nolan's use of practical effects really enhances this movie and have solidified it as a timeless classic that doesn't really show its age. We have some amazing shots in this movie, great establishing shots and epic camera movement, a lot of iconic moments. The soundtrack is amazing, one of Hans Zimmer's best in my opinion. Obviously, the suit design and Batmobile, Batmotorcycle, props and stunts are expertly designed and executed. It's a really solid movie. I simply want to point out that it's not perfect. I'm docking points because there are some cringeworthy moments in this movie. Oftentimes, David S. Goyer's writing can feel a bit B-movie quality. The dialogue can be campy and awkward.
I didn't sign up for this! I recommend you buy American.
Harvey Dent's arc is undercooked and rushed. Some plot conveniences, like discovering the fingerprint on the bullet, induce eye rolling. The Joker's plan of getting caught only to break out is an overdone and hard to believe cliche. Rachel is reduced from a powerful character in the first movie to a trope damsel in distress, and Nolan's gangster crime world never felt fully developed. On top of that, Nolan's basically abandoned the Gotham that he built, and it hurt a lot of the world building. Oftentimes, he produces a really flat and uninteresting image for his movies, so a lot of this movie just isn't very stylized, which isn't necessary. It just adds to the list of things that reduce the cinematicness of this movie for me. The Batman pulls ahead this round with a 9. First of all, I love the color grade for this movie. There's contrast and saturation. It's a great style. In addition, you have really interesting and artfully done camera work in almost every scene. I love the shallow depth of field. I love the close-ups, the wides, the establishing shots. Every shot is beautifully composed. If I were making a list of breathtaking imagery, I think I would have more snippets from this movie than The Dark Knight. You can tell it's just a really creative and collaborative movie. Matt Reeves did an excellent job at bringing everyone's unique talents out under a cohesive tone. The action sequences are amazing. The hallway fight scene where it's lit up by gunfire, the brutality of it all is accentuated by the visceral sound design. Robert Pattinson has such a physical presence, even if he isn't as big as Christian Bale. There's a certain weight to his physicality and movements that just screams powerful and menacing. This is all enhanced by the amazing costume, my personal favorite, with the magnetic batarang knife. The Tumbler is a better Batmobile in my opinion, but come on, the muscle car was an awesome choice. The Gotham world building is so good. It really just feels like a scummy, nasty city. The petty crime and white collar crime and corruption was treated amazingly. I love the editing. It's slower, but it does an excellent job at developing tension and suspense and mystery, which makes up for the fewer action scenes. You may disagree with the way I've scored these, but I think I've made a pretty good case, and I'd like to hear yours.
Round 5. Performance.
Nothing will make or break a movie quite as fast as this, and The Dark Knight gets an 8.5. Obviously, this is in large part due to Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker. It's incredible. It's an amazing transformation. The voice is iconic. The mannerisms he developed are perfect. He truly became the Joker, and I don't think his performance is overrated. I think it's truly deserving of all the praise. I'm not a simp though, and I'm not going to give this movie a 10 just because Heath Ledger gives an immortal performance. The Joker carries this movie, and I think Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman, and Gary Oldman do a good job as well, but a lot of the supporting characters aren't as compelling. Maggie Gyllenhaal straight up annoys me. I've made fun of her performance for years.
Okay, stop.
Then there are some extras and minor characters that can be kind of cringe and one-dimensional. Again, nothing bad here, but I just can't feel good about saying everyone in this movie gives an amazing performance because honestly, they're just fine, and Heath Ledger stands high above them. I'm giving The Batman a controversial 9. I might get a lot of hate for thinking the performances in this movie outrank Heath Ledger, but I just think that the whole ensemble offer much more compelling performances and character depth. Every actor in this movie feels like they could talk about their character's backstory for hours. They've just really thought about who they are and how they fit into this world. While the gangsters in The Dark Knight are laughable, Colin Farrell's Penguin was seriously transformative and amazing, just like the Joker. I can totally understand if you don't like Paul Dano as the Riddler, but I was fully convinced that this was a Riddler that was super intelligent but really messed up in the head, almost like he was on the spectrum, if that's appropriate to say. I don't know. Zoe Kravitz was powerful, seductive, and a scene stealer. I really like Jeffrey Wright as the Commissioner. You can sense his goodness, but almost like his hope is fading. He's funny and sarcastic, and his trust with Batman feels more authentic. John Turturro was a pleasant surprise. He really brings that crime mob boss feel, and it's just a complete sleazeball. Let's not forget Robert Pattinson, who manages to show so much despite being in a suit most of the time. Watching him have to deal with his parents maybe not being what he believed was incredible. Overall, I think every performance in this movie just helped create a really believable and cohesive Gotham. Time to tally up the points and figure out which of these Batman movies is better.
And the winner is...
The Batman takes the lead by half a point. You guys, honestly, it's just a matter of preference, and I could easily see how someone prefers The Dark Knight to this movie. The point of this video was mainly to show that The Dark Knight is not near as perfect or untouchable as you may think, and it's okay if some people prefer the Batman to this movie. Regardless, feel free to leave death threats in the comments. Alright you guys, thanks for watching this edition of Silver Screen Skirmish. Let me know in the comments what other movies should battle it out head to head, and whether you agree with me or hate my stupid face and my opinions. If you like The Dark Knight more, then hit subscribe, like, and that bell so you can always be the first to comment how much you hate me on all my videos. As always, Noah, thanks for watching, and the rest of you, stay average.